In classical antiquity, Heracles stood as the preeminent solar hero. His life followed a trajectory of tragedy, divine jealousy, and brute physical conquest. Primary mythological records, compiled by historians like Apollodorus and Diodorus Siculus, established the hero's exploits as a strictly literal historical standard. To the ancient Greeks, the 12 labors were external, geographical events where a physical man overcame physical monsters. Within this classical context, Heracles was a flawed figure whose defining virtue was his devastating, unrefined strength. This literal understanding shifted during the Renaissance, when Hermetic philosophers began applying a symbolic lens to the myth. These scholars viewed the labors through the framework of the magnum opus, the great work of inner transformation sought by alchemists. This shift was a matter of interpretive correspondence. Hermeticists looked past the literal labor of the hero to find a hidden philosophical significance. This vintage astronomical chart illustrates the 12 signs of the zodiac. Renaissance thinkers mapped the sequence of the 12 labors directly onto these 12 operations of transformation. Each sign and its corresponding labor represented a specific gate in a structured process of internal transmutation. In the Western esoteric tradition, the 12 labors function as an allegorical blueprint for the progressive divinization of the human soul. The alchemical reading begins by defining Heracles as royal sulfur in potential, the awakened but highly volatile human will. Without guidance, his immense strength leads to madness and the tragic destruction of his own household. This collapse leads to the first alchemical stage, nigredo. This is the phase of blackening and chaos, requiring a direct confrontation with the darker elements of the self. Hermeticists identify the first labor, the Nemean lion, as the untamed ego and raw animal pride. By wearing the lion's skin as armor, Heracles demonstrates the integration of the lower self, turning a former threat into a protective garment. The depth of this nigredo process is further explored in the 12th labor, the capture of the three-headed hound Cerberus. This descent into the underworld represents a psychological encounter with the unconscious and the heavy Saturnian darkness of the psyche. The nigredo phase demonstrates that the initiate can only approach the light after mastering their own internal chaos and base instincts. Following the breakdown of the ego, the process moves into albedo, or the whitening, a stage focused on purification. The 5th labor, cleansing the Augean stables, serves as the alchemical operation of solve, the washing away of accumulated spiritual impurities. Purification is achieved not through force, but by diverting 2 rivers. Heracles uses the natural flow of these mercurial waters to clear years of filth in a single day. The 2nd labor against the Lernaean Hydra illustrates a different challenge of the soul. In this woodcut, multiple serpents represent psychological fragmentation and the multiplying nature of human passions. When attacked with blunt force, the Hydra's heads multiply. This mirrors how the simple suppression of vice often results in its proliferation. To succeed, Heracles uses the hidden fire of alchemy, a purifying intelligence that cauterizes the wounds and halts the growth of the shadow. Through the albedo phase, the initiate directs natural forces and intelligence to wash away the ego matter exposed during nigredo. Purification leads to citronitis, the yellowing. This phase represents the harmonization and illumination of the mind. This is embodied in the 6th labor, driving away the Stymphalian birds. These creatures represent psychic noise, false ideas, and destructive mental distractions. Heracles scatters them using bronze clappers. The resulting sound acts as the logos, an ordering vibration that shatters mental chaos. This mental order allows for the deep internal integration required in the 10th labor, the capture of the cattle of Geryon. This animation shows the unification of the 3 fundamental principles of alchemy: the soul, or sulfur, the spirit, or mercury, and the body, or salt. By achieving citronitis, the initiate silences mental static and orders these internal elements, preparing for the approach to the divine. The 11th labor, stealing the golden apples of the Hesperides, marks the transition from mortal achievement to divine status. These fruits are symbolic of solar gold, eternal wisdom, and the completion of the Philosopher's Stone. To obtain them, Heracles temporarily shoulders the weight of the heavens in place of the Titan Atlas. This act of holding the sky represents the initiate's mastery over celestial spheres and the astral forces that govern mortality. Possessing the golden apples indicates the initiate has outgrown earthly limitations and holds immortality in potential. In the 20th century, Carl Jung translated this alchemical framework into a secular psychological model. Jung's concept of individuation provides a modern parallel to the alchemical great work. He viewed mythological monsters as manifestations of the shadow, the unintegrated, darker parts of the human unconscious. Whether navigating 16th century alchemy or 20th century psychology, these systems both utilize a sequential architecture to map the internal transformation of the human condition. The final stage of this transformation is rubedo, or the reddening, representing divine union. In his final mortal act, Heracles ascends a funeral pyre on Mount Oita to escape the agony of a poisoned tunic. The pyre facilitates the annihilation of the old mortal self required for final transmutation. With his mortal parts consumed by fire, he ascends to Olympus and enters into a celestial marriage with the goddess Hebe. This union symbolizes the final integration of the human and the divine, resulting in a state of perpetual regeneration. Heracles persists in the esoteric imagination as the archetypal initiate who completed the magnum opus, transmuting base instincts into the divine life of the Philosopher's Stone.